למפגש השלישי שלנו במסגרת סדרת ההרצאות על מרסל ינקו ומורשת הדאדה. היום ההרצאה היא בשפה האנגלית, וברשותכם אני אעבור מעתה והלאה לאנגלית. Once again, good evening to all our friends. Today is the third meeting in our series of international lectures about Marcel Janco and the Dada spirit. Today's lecture is by Professor Dr. Anna Maria Zahariade. We met in Romania 13 years ago, and we don't look even a day older, in 2008, in a wonderful conference about Marcel Janco and his work as an architect. And I'm very proud to host Maria Zahariade, Anna Maria Zahariade today. And she's going to talk about Marcel Janco's contribution to modern architecture in Romania. So the floor is all yours. You are muted.
I always forget. Well, thank you very much, Raya. Thank you all to be interested in Marcel Janco's architecture. Hello to everyone. But before I start, please let me thank Raya, Michael, and all the organizers of this series of events for this invitation. This allowed me to remember my questions and my doubts and my curiosities. In fact, when I had the privilege to work with Anca Iliescu and Nicolae Lascu at the volume issued in celebration of Janco's centennial. And generally, this conference is based on this research. Well, I'll share the screen, please. It is okay, do you see?
Yes,
right?
yes,
Okay.
yes, everything is okay. We see it. Yes, you can start.
I start with this remarkable painting, Marcel Janco's Ball in Zurich, that I saw in 1994 in the Art Museum in Tel Aviv. From then on, I remind it as the metaphor of the modernist avant-gardes, of their thirst of life, of their enchantment, passionate commitment, but also of their the unpredictable troubles they encountered and their drama too. It is a ball and a fight. It was painted in 1915, and I do think that it was Janco's premonition. It is his life, in fact, at least his life in Romania, about which I'll try to speak today. So it is about the duty that Janco audaciously assumed when he returned to Romania after Switzerland and France at the end of 1921, and that he endured with optimism and courage, trying to surpass the many obstacles he had encountered in all directions he was involved in. Among these directions, we all know about the decisive involvement in the Dada movement and his paintings. And they are well known around the world. We know less about his architecture, to which he was passionately dedicated. In fact, architecture was his basic profession, though without diploma. And most probably, architecture ensured his living and helped him fund other activities as architectural magazines and art shows. To my knowledge, he is the only Dadaist to have practiced architecture. And we can wonder how is it possible to conjugate the iconoclastic, corrosive Dada spirit with the steady positiveness of architecture and the structural strictness of the architectural design. Or how the unrest of the 26-year-old modernist vanguard allowed the patience to cope with the intrinsic conservativeness of architecture. Because architecture aspires to permanence, is rational and constructive. Among arts, architecture generally reacts belatedly to the spirit of artistic changes. It requires lots of money and clients willing to pay for novelty, and also a considerable delay from the design idea to the built object. With these questions, I present some features of the architect Janco, trying to spotlight his endeavor to make, through his design, the avant-garde spirit penetrate the inherent conservativeness of Romanian architecture, stuck in the construction of its national identity. First of all, it is undeniable that his charisma, his inflaming personality and vast culture helped him and imposed from the beginning. To give you an example, he organized in 1924 the Contemporaneous Art Exhibition in Bucharest, an event of unprecedented magnitude in Romania, largely covered by the Contemporaneous Journal. The mise en scène of the opening evening was so spectacularly directed by Janco that the thrill of the event is recorded in one of the best Romanian novels of the time, The Procrustean Bed. You have the fragment by Camille Petrescu. His personality was complimentary summarized by the actress and poetess Dida Solomon. She says, probably she exaggerates a little, that Marcel Janco, to whom modern Bucharest owes so much, was towering above everything and everyone. Well, anyway, his charisma was absolutely extraordinary. The young Janco started his Romanian architectural career rather advocated the new spirit in architecture than building. Naturally, this is the direction in which Janco could easily continue his previous avant-garde activism. His main tribune was the magazine Contemporaneous that he had founded immediately after his return in Romania. Well, after his return, thank you, his return to Romania, he financed the magazine by himself, and between 22 and 32, through 102 issues, Janco filled the hunger for new ideas of a young generation of Romanian architects and kept them connected with their Western peers. He built up a network of international contributors, all of them first-class names of the moment, with whose help he continuously disseminated the modernist ideas. Although he was not a systematic theorist, He is the first and about the only one Romanian architect to have been seriously, to have been seriously involved and concerned with the theories of the modern movement and so strongly connected to the ideas developed in Western Europe. His voice was loud and inflaming, often with apodictic tones characteristic for the avant-garde writings, sometimes more reflexive, as if he was trying to clarify the new ideas to himself. He moves with assurance between art and architecture, from avant-garde aesthetics to urbanism, maintaining an intense atmosphere of theoretical and journalistic effervescence. He starts from the idea that the fine arts gave the first assault, I quote, over academism, and the artistic law of our times is almost let down. Consequently, architecture as discipline, says Janco, is obliged to bring light around the means to formulate its fundament and its very nature. From the very beginning, he tried to formulate and to follow the principles of the new architecture. And we expect to find them applied in his work. The architect Janco had 30 active years in Romania. He designed 40 buildings we know, together with his brother Julius, maybe unjustly shadowed by Marcel's renown in the history of architecture. As you see, many buildings are signed like this, Marcel Janco, as if they were one of the same person. It was, in fact, the architectural studio Office for Modern Studies they founded, and located in the houses designed by them and for them. At the beginning, it was not simple for him to find commissions. On the local market, conditioned as it was by the expression of the national ethos, clients who wanted to live in a modernist atmosphere were very rare. The first clients were his family and the friends who shared the same ideals. Even after his clientele grew, many of the commissioners belonged to artistic circles, and most of them to the Jewish community. He has never received public commissions. This is not only surprising if we take into consideration that Romanian interwar modernism was resulted in its largest part from the private investment, which was stimulated by the social and professional changes after the First World War, in their turn catalyzed by the economic progress and the growing prosperity, the liberal rise, the increasing importance of modern bureaucracy, the progress in education, etc., and thus by the subsequent affirmation of a new upper and middle class, a capitalist bourgeoisie becoming more and more influential. The growing self-awareness of the social strata in quest of distinct representation found its expression in modernism as sign of progressiveness. Generally, the modernist buildings of the period were mainly commissioned by more or less well-off practitioners of liberal professions, artists, academics, and intellectuals, engineers, mid and high-ranking officials and public servants, etc. Some champions of the new economy, to whom property speculators must be added, as the value of real estate became a common economic tool during that period. And of course, there are a lot of Jewish artists, and generally the proportion of Jewish people in these professions was very important. For the architect Janco, the relatively closed circle of clients resulted in the reduced number of building types, especially residential architecture, out of which mostly single-family houses. Only 3 projects have other functions. The other consequence was their position in the city. The majority of these buildings are located in the Jewish area of the city and around it, while only the later villas are placed in the newly planned luxury residential area in the north of the city. I'll try to overview shortly his projects, insisting only on some of them that I consider more meaningful for what I'm searching for: the prolongation of Janco's avant-gardism in architecture. He liked to call himself a radical artist. Was he a radical architect too? I don't know, something is... sorry, just a moment, well, I'll try from here, sorry. Between 22 and 26, we rather find dreams and hesitant drawings, paper architecture that didn't find proper clients. The very rare commissions are exercises of a sort of proto-modernism, or simplifying the traditional architecture. The only ones that probably satisfied his modern spirit are the interiors of the Contemporaneo magazine. We must not forget that at the time, modernism was not really so visible, and neither in Western Europe. And the theoretical and visual information concerning modernism in architecture were disseminated mainly through the avant-garde magazines. However, in 26, he designed the first modernist building in Romania on his father's property in the Jewish area of the city. A house which probably was an unbelievable oddity in the traditional neighborhood. It is an economical block of flats where he had his first studio, a provocative colored volume reminding Janco's plaster reliefs created in Zurich. Probably that is why Janco declared that this villa, the Fuchs Villa, is the first modernist villa in Romania, and there is no exaggeration in this. Historians generally agree that it is first Janco's modernist white box. I have certain doubts concerning this level because Janco has never built a typical white box. The following projects seem to depart from this line. I'll be quite quick with the presentation of his projects because we have not much time. This is in the same line departing from the so-called white boxes. Neither the apparent simple form of these two villas, of the Chihaescu villa and the next one, the Bordeianu, you'll see this, is a typical modernist white box. Even their whiteness is relative. The exterior surface is more vibrant. I detailed a little this villa because it has a very special plan, very classical in a way. And you have here the Chihaescu villa. And Some other boxes, they are even less white, some other houses, some other villas that are even less white boxes. Wexler, Iluța, Justar. In a way, closer to the international language are the blocks of flats. You have there some examples. Costin and Clara Janco. In 1934, when he was officially recognized as architect, he signed his most obvious modernist building, the very elegant and up-to-date Popper Sanatorium in Predeal. In fact, this is the second building with a non-residential program after the swimming pool of the Romanian Federation of Sports Society, built in 29, and also, let's say, you can see the types of vocabulary used here. And in 35, he resumes this modernist language in the building of the Basaltine Society, the third building with more than strictly residential function he designed. However, in 34, he designed for Solid Gold a 3-apartment building, the upper one with a duplex, where he playfully managed to transform, to dilute on the length of the 3 street facades, the modernist language of horizontal parapets and windows into a folding facade with expressionist vibrations. Or, put otherwise, he created a kind of anamorphic transformation from Villa Fuchs to Hermann Janco building. After the more, sorry, I have some other photographs from Solid Gold, which is a very special building. After the more conventional blocks of flat of 1935, you have them there. Villa Reich, designed in 36, represents a sparkling display of white abstraction, reminding maybe his blanc-sur-blanc composition in plaster or stained glass. Very far from the sculptural dynamics of the gold building, yet neither the volumetric composition nor the interiors allowed to call it a typical white box. Finally, in 37, Janco designed the last villas before his emigration for Hermina Hasner and the sculptor Milița Pătrașcu and her husband. Milița Pătrașcu was Janco's close friend in the northern luxury residential area of Bucharest. Back in the Jewish area of Bucharest, Haimovici and Vătărescu apartment building has an unconventional modernist language, eclectic in some respects, but I'm cautious with stylistic labels. While the last project he signed in Romania in 38, the Naum Ghica building is simpler, less spectacular, rather neutral. We can say that before leaving his Romanian practice, the mature Janco was an accomplished architect. As you can imagine, in the Bucharest of that period, his architecture was received in contradictory ways. On the one hand, his architecture was refuted by the conservatives and the supporters of the national style. For similar reasons, they used to reject modernism in general. The denial became more aggressive with the gradual increase of nationalism and xenophobia at the end of the 30s. On the other hand, his architectural activity exceeded the limits of the artistic avant-garde milieus, and his renown in the Romanian cultural environment was well established. We can see this from the open letter that George Matei Cantacuzino published in Contemporaneul in 1931. Here, this princely character of the architectural culture of the period, founder of the most philosophical magazine of art and architecture, Simetria, at the end of the period, long after Janco's Contemporaneul, enthusiastically acclaimed Janco for his activity and acknowledged the decisive role he played in the adoption of modernism in Romania. I transcribed here a good part of this letter because it is a beautiful text, but I underlined the most significant fragments where he says that you were the first person in this country to turn his back on a tired and sterile mentality. Your healthy buildings appear as the healthy premises of a healthy future. Well, being a forerunner, you have put into all your activity the fanaticism required by the avant-garde. Cantacuzino's letter should have made Janco happy. It was a fantastic public recognition if we consider the outstanding prestige that Cantacuzino enjoyed within the intellectual and social Romanian elite. Was Janco happy? This is a curious question to ask, and you may consider it misplaced in a lecture on architecture, but I have a reason to ask it. Janco did not seem happy. His answer, written with few months' delay, probably after a time for introspection, is unexpected and denotes disappointment, discontent, even deep bitterness. This has intrigued me ever since I first read it. And I do think that it is worth reflecting on it, for it could explain much about Janco's architecture and personality. Why was Janco so bitter? Actually, in the 30s, it seemed that the way he had fought to open was taken by an increasing number of practitioners. A study shows that there, at the end of the period, there were about 100 architects who had already designed at least 2 modernist buildings. The missionary of the new architecture should have been content, especially when his preceding role was being recognized. But precisely here, in that modernist afflatus of Bucharest, lays the reason of Janco's anger and virulence. He denies his affiliation to this development. He reproves the costuming of plans in facades, the empty saraband in route for the golden calf, the fact that the cubist craziness of yesterday became beauty ideals, the import of modern ideas born through fraud, like the silk stockings, stolen from the beauty magazines, stolen from cinemas or slot machines. Which means that for him, the new architecture speaks of something else than what was prolifically being built up under his very eyes. This is the reason why I believe that this little pamphlet article, even if not entirely explicit, is especially meaningful. What would be those significant ideas regarding the new architecture whose absence makes him recount what others consider to be a victory of modernism? Certainly, we are in the rhythm of suppositions, but we can look again at his architecture, for it is difficult for me to believe that he didn't attempt to apply them, or at least he didn't search for them in his projects. This would be, for me at least, unbelievable, especially when knowing that many are luxury villas, a building type that since its very birth and by its essence remained the prevalent ground for plastic or expressive adventures. I'm searching for answers, looking again at his projects, this time from the perspective of that difference that seemed so important for Janco. And I leave aside the majority of the tenement or the projects of the beginning with the traditional architecture or the sketches, line he immediately abandoned. I also leave aside the majority of the tenement buildings. All of them are lucrative investment, more or less in line with the Bucharest modernism, precisely in the sense of consumption of the fashionable, accepted language that he condemned in his letter. The most common expression of modern movement, the ones which made Alfred Barr and Hitchcock to label it as international style, can be recognized in three projects I presented before: the swimming pool and the Bucegi Sanatorium and the Basaltine building to some extent. In a way, they still preserve certain conformism to the modernist rule, and I exclude them too. Eventually, a number of more unconventional projects come to the fore. Their diverse expressive character, the subtle cutting-edge balance between audacity and sensibleness, have a puzzling effect and make it difficult to confine them stylistically, although we recognize their modernism. The interior of Contemporanul, some small apartment buildings you have here, and on the other side, the villas. If we look more attentively at their formal approach, we can note they are all objects with powerful but less typical modern expressivity, sometimes discreet and conspicuous, sometimes unusually sculptural and visible. They do not propose revolutionary plans. One could say that the interiors are almost traditional in many respects. That's why I put some plans before. So they are, as I said, could be considered traditional in many respects if it weren't the particular modeling of the space. In fact, it is neither the volume nor the interior space that are directly in concern, but their limits. Thus, their final sculptural quality is indirect and not always obvious. It could be only hidden in the interior. It is rather born out of the plasticity of the elements that define and compose the object or the space, because the same method is employed both inside and outside. These limits could be in themselves sculptures, articulated, simple and powerful shapes, as in the Euster house. They could fold and metamorphose gradually, as in gold building. They could become huge graphic constructions, either flat of a staggering white as Reich, or colored abstract schemes, as in contemporaneous interiors, or either using with graphical sense prosaic means, changing of materials, textures and colors, textures, diverse profiles, etc. As in Hermann Janco building, Chapier, Daniel, and even in this one, for instance, but not so obvious. The expressive means, not precisely orthodox for the modern movement, are in fact, these expressive means he used, are in fact simple, reasonable, not expensive, and not extravagant. Janco uses them, moving spontaneously between sculpture, graphic and coloristic exercise, and architecture, interpreting sculpturally or graphically various constructive or functional parts, walls, parapets, bow windows, openings, furniture, etc. Combining in unusual ways elements belonging to the functionalist, expressionist, or purist vocabulary, and integrating in architecture, fine arts, oeuvre, bas-relief, stained glass, as if they naturally belong to the architectural vocabulary. And all these means associate in giving the final expressivity of the object or space, sculptural, original, but not striking, modern, but difficult to classify. In fact, it is a kind of compositional freedom that models the volume and the inner space, at the same time not paying attention to the established rules, to the principles of modernism. Janco does not want to apply a dogma. He is only searching. However, his compositional freedom is neither so free, nor is it a play pour épater les bourgeois. It is a systematic search for the new architecture, as Janco understood it. In his words, it is the passion for artistic synthesis of the natural and the simple shapes representing the nowadays function, which so becomes a new design approach, but only in contact, he says, with the fine arts. This is an idea he first elaborated in 1919 in the conference on Cubism, abstract art and architecture held in Zurich. And the idea comes back with stubborn recurrence in many of his later texts. Here stands, at least for me, the very architectural originality of Janco, and quite possibly the hardcore of his discourse and practice in Romania. The idea of Gesamtkunstwerk was not new. It belonged to the avant-garde ethos, but Marcel Janco is the sole architect who theorized and applied it with continuity. My point is that this is a key for understanding Janco's avant-garde spirit as architect, and also for understanding the exasperation in his letter. The modality of making architecture he proposes is not possible, he says, but in discipline and by knowing the whole concept from plastic art to architecture. And this artistic path requires cultural and artistic deliberation, as he writes in his letter. To know the whole thought from plastic art to architecture. Janco was a radical artist. But in architecture, he was rather a radical raisonneur, if I may say. This restless search between visual arts and architecture is, with all its richness and vulnerability, we have no time to discuss about this. This is the most original and durable dimension of Janco's way to reach the new architecture. That is why Janco was trying to do, that is what Janco was trying to do every time he got the chance to do this, thus generating the puzzling variety of which is a contre-courant of his projects. Janco wants artistic search, even if imperfect, not already walked path to make architecture. And what he doesn't find, this is what he doesn't find in the modernism of the Bucharest of the 30s, where he understands immediately that the modernist language is consumed without questioning. From this point of view, I'm asking myself if this obsessive letter does not bring to light a more radical and more avant-garde architect than all the propagandistic texts he published. Thus, the few buildings that I mentioned lately are subtle built manifestos for a design approach he was endeavoring to open. Yet, the path he expected and he wanted was not followed by any Romanian architect. This is not the first case in modern Romania. Ironically, I should say, few decades before, Ion Mincu's original design approach had the same destiny. He is remembered as the father and the genitor of the national style, but no Romanian architect followed his original design path, much more generous and interesting than the generic ideology. This is a peculiar trajectory we had. Marcel Janco, the rebel young man to whom the short moment of méchant dadaïste ensured a durable posterity, and the mature Marcel Janco, an inquiring, critical architect, gifted one, who demands and practices with exasperated consistency a discipline of a true art and of a new architecture, but who was not followed in his country and whose architecture risked to be lost in the local lack of understanding and the local carelessness. I do not know if Janco's disappointment with the superficial and certainly simpler consumption of modernism in Romania contributed to some extent to his decision to leave for Palestine. Anyway, the horizons were growing increasingly menacing, and Janco had his premonition in the ball in Zurich. You have here the upper part of the painting. And I thank you very much for your attention. And if you have questions, I'm ready to answer, if I know. Thank you.
Anyone, questions?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I should have left this.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I wanted to ask about the vitrages and the interiors. Can you say a bit about it? Can you tell us?
Well, which one?
No, in general, I understand that the design was also the interior design very much.
Yes.
Yes, you elaborated on that, yeah.
Well, not in all the buildings, but
Mm-hmm.
in many of them. And the photographs you have here are, well, from 96, when we, 95, when we worked for the catalog. Please allow me to turn on the light.
Sure.
Sorry. So in fact, it was the modeling of the parapets of the walls, making furniture inside, something which was very modern at the time and not usual. And in some, not in all his villas, and even in the apartment buildings, he introduced stained glass, sometimes extremely discreet. Not only in the, let's say, luxury houses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there were small attentions he tried to show small artworks. Probably he wanted, well, this is an explanation, an interpretation. He wanted to make people attentive to art. And generally, the stained glass was designed by him.
Yeah, I understand. I wanted to also ask about the texture of the buildings. That there was usually it wasn't completely. How do you say it? Without texture.
No, they were. I don't see if it is. You can notice here. Well, it is complicated to go to the first slides with this building, for instance. This building has a simple plaster, but with parts as if they were colors. This is demolished, unfortunately, but there were colors. It was a change of material. This one is the change of the surface. See, there are more, there are plain surfaces and I don't know the word in English. Well, vibrant surfaces, vibrant plasters well, the problem is that they were very well done, very well done. I don't, probably the builder was very good. And in general, the modernist buildings of that period are used expensive materials or well, high quality materials. They resisted. This is absolutely unbelievable. They have almost 100 years. And however, they resisted the finishing. But in various cases, or in some cases, they were inhabited in an improper manner, and there were transformations. And so we have only some interiors which are original, more or less original. For instance, in Soligold building, from which are these.
Maybe you can share the screen, Mrs. Zahariade.
It's not, sorry, I was showing, oh, sorry, oh, it's horrible. It's not so simple now. I was showing to myself. You should have. You see that? Do you see them? Are they?
Yes.
Yes. So in Soligold building, from where we have this, for instance, they were my photographs from 96 and 95, and now the present owner, the actual owner of this very special apartment, the only one with this double void in Janco's activity, in Janco's work. It seems that the present owner has already has very well restored the interior, but I didn't see it yet. I'll go to see it.
Thank you
I
very
don't
much.
know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I know that now in Bucharest these buildings are very prized and considered very special, let's say. So I hope they will be revived somehow.
I do hope this, but well, it is difficult because generally this building modernism is not really understood, largely understood. You know, there are very few dialogues on architecture in general in the media. And well, maybe it will come. We try to do this. People, and as many buildings are in bad condition in this moment, there are buildings which are in bad conditions. So it is difficult to make people understand that they are really beauties and they have to love them and to protect them. Well, Marcel Janco's houses, villas, are generally protected. They are in the list of the historic monuments.
Thank you so much.
There is another two questions. One is by Dan Romanescu, is it right?
Romashcanu. Hello.
Romashcanu, sorry. I think it will be easier for me to answer. You are asking about Marcel Janco's work as an architect in Palestine/Israel. Well, I think the best thing, you know Hebrew, English?
Both.
Anyway, in our website, when you look at about, there is articles of Marcel Janco, and then you can find an article for research I did a few years ago about Marcel Janco, two houses that he built in Israel. One is still there in Hanassi Street in Herzliya. This is probably the one you are referring. Only the facade is original. The rest is something which was done later. And you can also contact me and I can give you more material. And there is another comment/question, and that maybe you, Anna Maria, can help us. There is this owner of a tourist company working in Bucharest, and they're bringing Israeli tourists to go around the city, and he's asking whether he can get a kind of help in seeing those houses. Well, if you contact me, I can give you the addresses. I have them all, it might help. There's also this map that, that's what you are holding. All right, yes. I think I have them, but I don't know exactly where it is. If I won't get them, then I'll contact you and ask you to send me. I think there is a version, a digital version of it. Anyway, contact us and I'll try to get you. Mickey, do you have this map too? I have it someplace. I don't know where it is.
I can.
Yeah, they should have them in Bucharest.
Yeah. Anna Maria, how can he get this map in Bucharest?
Well, the truth is that I don't know, but I am going to ask. Maybe it is on the, I don't know if it is possible to have the digital image, but I asked the authors because they starting with a catalog published in 96, they organized tours. And there are Marcel Janco tours in Bucharest.
Oh, that's great. So
I can, hi, it's me, Ilan.
Hello.
Hi, I can, because I'm in Bucharest, I can make directly the contact to you.
Perfect. Well, you have. I'll give you my mail, and Raya has my mail, and you can contact me. And of course, it's possible to have it. And I'll know more about. But I know that there are from time to time. I don't know if they are periodical or not. Very constant periodicity, but there were 2 architectural tours, and there are a lot of organization. I'll ask that NGOs to organize this based on the books and on the map. And it is easy to organize Marcel Janco tour because, however, his buildings are somehow grouped.
So what I suggest that you'll contact me and I'll give you the mail and we'll try to help you. I think it's also part of our mission to let Israeli tourists in Romania see the connection of Marcel Janco to the modernism of Bucharest. And if there aren't any more questions, then I'm closing this meeting. I just want to tell you that this last lecture finished the first part of our series, the one that Professor Michael Finkenthal was in charge. Now we are starting the second part, Marcel Janco in Israel, and I'm in charge. And the next meeting will be on Wednesday, once again on Wednesday. Use the link of the second link, and it will be by Dr. Irit Carmon-Popper, who's with us today too. And the lecture will be from an Arab village to an artist village, Marcel Janco and the establishment of Enhod, and in Hebrew, מכפר ערבי לכפר אומנים, Marcel Janco וייסוד Enhod. It will be next week in Hebrew, and we are talking about the possibility that the next lecture that Alec Mishori is going to give might be in English. We are checking it, so all our friends from Bucharest and other places might be able to join us too. And I'll let you know at the end of the next talk. So see you next Wednesday, 6 o'clock. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. It was a
Bye-bye.
pleasure.